This is Allison and I'm here with the Baby Lock Triumph. The Triumph is Baby Lock's top-of-the-line serger and cover stitch machine, and when you work with this machine it can be really difficult to choose your favorite features. Just from looking at it, we can see that there's a lot to love. We have 5 inches of workspace to the right of the needle, so if you're working with a larger project that requires a chain or cover stitch, you're going to be able to fit that project into the machine without a problem. We also have 6 different LED lights built into the throat and around the needle. We have an adjustable speed control here on the front of the machine. It comes with a knee lift, and the presser foot lifter is built in here to the front, so it's very easily accessible no matter what you're working on. So we're going to talk about the 2 separate sides of the machine today, the cover stitch as well as the serger, and how easy it is to transition between the two. So let's talk about the chain and cover stitch side first. One of the most important things about this machine is how easy it is to thread. Typically with the chain and cover stitch machine, one of the headaches that people encounter is threading. You have to get some tweezers out, you might have to run your thread through a couple different loops or into a couple of different tension discs, but Baby Lock has taken all of that away. So all I have to do to get the machine ready to thread is move this knob down to threading, turn my hand wheel so that the looper threaders will lock into place, and then put my thread into the correct position for the machine to thread the loopers itself. So all I'm going to do is pull the chain thread into the looper threader port, and my chain looper is threaded. Now for the needles, it's just as simple. That same threading mechanism that you heard is exactly the same mechanism that threads the needles for us. So all I have to do is put my thread into place, pull down the threader, and hold my thread in place. And the Triumph threads the needles extremely easily. We're going to do that for the other 2 needles. And just as easy as that, the cover stitch portion of the Triumph is threaded. Now when we start stitching, there are a couple differences that you'll notice with the Triumph between the Triumph and your traditional chain and cover stitch machine. The first thing is I don't really have to run a test strip, and I don't have to have a leader on any fabric that I'm working on. So this means that the Triumph will start stitching that beautiful chain and cover stitch as soon as it sinks its needles into the fabric. The other really cool thing is this machine will allow you to chain off, so you don't have to go back and tie your threads when you get to the end of a row or have another piece of fabric there to go through. You don't have to pull your needle threads to the front and pull your project straight back. Once the project comes out from underneath the presser foot, you are good to go. So let's take a look at how well this is going to stitch. And you see how beautiful that chain is there that chained off? And there is our chain stitch. Beautiful. So now we're going to add in a couple of needles and work with the serger portion too. So in order to transition between the 2 portions of the machine, it's very easy. A lot of people ask that question. They wonder if it's very difficult to switch back and forth between the serger and the chain and cover stitch, and it's really not. It's just a couple of small changes. So I'm going to add in these 2 needles here. And if you notice, I have 2 different colors of thread on the machine. Green are where the threads need to be for the serger, and the gold is where the threads need to be for the chain and cover stitch. Baby Lock has color-coded this machine for us, so we always know what we're working with, if we're working with the serger portion or the chain and cover stitch or both. So I'm going to take off the chain and cover table, and I'm going to put on the knife blade. And the other thing that is really phenomenal is Baby Lock has given us a quick reference threading guide. So no matter which stitch you're working with, all of the standard stitches are going to have a little game plan here for you to follow. So right now I'm going to be switching to using all 8 threads And here's my little chart for this. So all I have to do is follow the instructions, and it's going to tell me exactly what I need to be doing. So I'm going to go back to threading and work with my upper and lower looper for the serger. And again, this is the easiest part, the easiest threading that you'll find. And my lower looper's threaded. And for my upper looper, it's exactly the same. I'm just going to put the thread into the port, and there we go, we're threaded. And last but not least, the needles. And again, this is exactly the same as it was for the chain and cover stitch. We're just going to put our needle threader into position and place the thread right in front of the needle. So now that we have all 8 threads in use and all 5 needles, let's see how wonderfully these two parts of the machine play together. All right, so I've got my 4-thread overlock in the green and my 3 needle chain stitch here in the gold. I've got that beautiful chain coming off the end of the project, and then on the back you can see that the stitches are just as pretty. So now we're going to move forward from all 8 threads to using a 4-thread overlock on the serger side of the machine. So all I have to do is make a couple of adjustments. I'm going to trim my gold threads to take out the chain and cover stitch portion. And then I'm going to run out those threads. And so now I've just got the threads in the machine for the serger. Now I'm going to take out the needles as well. For the chain and cover stitch, and that will leave me with the serger needles. Now that is truly all we have to do to transition from using the chain and cover stitch to only using the serger. And if you've noticed, as we've been using different stitches and different types of fabric, I have not been making very many adjustments to the machine. That's because there are no individual tensions for each thread. Everything is automated so that I've got my looper tension and my needle tension, and this needle tension controls all three of the threads for the needles in the cover stitch portion. And it's the same as we move on to the serger side. We have a stitch selector that sets the tension for the stitch no matter what type of fabric we're using. So let me show you what that looks like. I've got this lining thread here that's going to fray pretty badly, and so my serge seam is going to make sure that that doesn't fray. It's going to lock in all of my fabric in place and keep that seam nice and perfect. And then as we move on to a different fabric, I'm not going to have to make any adjustments. So this is a pretty nice light fabric, and I'm going to stitch a 4-thread overlock. And so we've got a nice locked in seam here. And then if I go from this lightweight lining fabric to something thicker, I've got 2 layers of a 10-ounce denim here. And I'm going to put this into the machine, and then I'm going to fold it over. And you can see that it doesn't have any trouble with it. It's going to give me the same quality stitch on the 10-ounce denim than it did on the lining fabric. Now we're going to make a couple of other adjustments here so you can see a few other things that the machine will do. I'm going to take out the left needle on this, so we're going to end up with a 3-thread overlock narrow. So with the 3-thread overlock narrow, all I'm going to have to do is make one adjustment, tell it which stitch selector I want, and that's going to adjust my tensions for me. And so now I've got my beautiful 3-thread overlock. And also the differential feed here is extremely helpful. So if we're working with something that we want to have a little bit of a gather, I can put that into the stitch, or if I need it to be stretched out a little bit. So this gather is going to be very helpful if you need something quick and easy and don't want to work with fully ruffling. And there we go, very easy little gather. And now I'm going to switch into what the sergers are really known for, and that's working with stretchy fabrics or knits. This is a 4-way stretch lycra, and what this will do is it's going to stitch down my seam, but it's also going to allow the thread to flex with the fabric, so I'm not going to pop any stitches. So something that you're worried about working with on your sewing machine, you're going to be able to work with on the serger without a problem. There we go, and you can work with this type of fabric on both the chain stitch and the serger side. So we're going to stretch it. It's not going to give me any resistance. The thread's going to move with the fabric, and I'm not going to pop any stitches. Now the last thing that I want to show you about this machine is how beautiful the narrow rolled hem is. And in order to do that, I'm just going to change a couple of settings here. And there I have one of the most beautiful rolled hems you'll find. You'll be hard pressed to find a prettier one. And all you have to do is change a couple of different knobs. So this is the Baby Lock Triumph. It's really fantastic for any type of project that you need to work on. And I'm so glad that I was able to share with you all the fun things that you can do with this machine.